The crimson glow of dawn painted the sky as Wulfgar Wolftooth stood atop the rocky cliff, his long beard whipping in the bitter winter wind. Blood still stained his axe from the raid the previous night, a successful venture against a rival clan that had encroached upon their fishing waters. His men had taken their fill of silver and supplies, earning glory for their names and security for their families through the harsh months ahead. Yet as the cheers of victory faded and his warriors returned to their families, Wulfgar remained alone, watching the sea crash against the shore below. His 28 winters had brought him respect among his people, his strong arm and keen mind elevating him to chieftain after his father's death 3 seasons past. But the blood feud that had claimed his father, and his grandfather before him, remained unsettled, an endless cycle of death and vengeance that had consumed the Wolftooth clan for generations. "The gods have cursed our bloodline," his father had whispered as he lay dying, an enemy's blade having finally found its mark. "Love brings only death to a Wolftooth. Remember this, my son." Wulfgar had heeded those words, keeping women at arm's length, taking pleasure but never allowing his heart to become entangled. A chieftain's strength must never waver, especially one whose people depended on him to avenge their fallen and protect their future. The blood debt against the Thundershield clan would be paid in full, this he had sworn before the gods. A strange sound carried on the wind, breaking through his dark thoughts. Wulfgar cocked his head, listening more intently. It came again, a woman's voice, sobbing. Following the sound, he descended the rocky path toward the shore, hand resting on his knife. Raiders sometimes use such tricks to lure unsuspecting fools to their deaths. But when he rounded the jutting stone at the beach's edge, he saw no ambush, only a woman huddled against the rocks, her sodden dress clinging to her shivering frame. Dark hair hung in wet ropes around her face as she wept, seemingly unaware of his approach until his shadow fell across her. She looked up with a startled gasp, scrambling backward until the rocks stopped her retreat. Her eyes, the deep blue of a summer sky, widened with terror. "Please," she said in the tongue of the Saxons, though her accent was strange, "I mean no harm." Wulfgar studied her, noting the fine quality of her mudded dress and the golden arm ring partially hidden by her sleeve. No simple peasant, then. Perhaps a noblewoman caught in their raid? But they had struck far to the south, and no women had been taken. "How did you come to be here?" he demanded in her language. "Our ship." She gestured weakly toward the sea. "We were bound for Northumbria when the storm hit. Everyone," her voice broke. "Everyone is gone." Wulfgar's gaze moved to the shoreline where scattered planks of wood had washed ashore, the remnants of a vessel claimed by the sea. Freya had spared this one, it seemed. But for what purpose? The old ways demanded caution with strangers. She could be a spy from a rival clan or worse, a Saxon noble whose disappearance would bring their warriors seeking vengeance. Yet something about her vulnerability stirred a feeling within him that he had long suppressed. "What is your name?" he asked, less harshly than before. She hesitated, measuring him with those ocean blue eyes. "Nessa. Nessa Tidewell." "You have washed onto Wolftooth lands, Nessa Tidewell," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I am Wulfgar, son of Hrolf, chieftain of this clan. You will come with me." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but she placed her trembling hand in his. "To be your slave." "To be warm," he replied simply. "The gods will decide what becomes of you after that." The village bustled with activity as Wulfgar led the stranger through its center. Women tending smoking racks of fish paused their work, and children ceased their games to stare openly at the bedraggled Saxon woman. Warriors lounging outside the mead hall straightened, hands instinctively moving to weapons. "Chieftain brings back strange flotsam," called Gunnar, Wulfgar's second-in-command. "Is she a prize from the raid?" "She is a survivor," Wulfgar answered, guiding Nessa toward his longhouse. The sea claimed her ship and spared her. We will offer the hospitality of our hearth, as the gods would expect. Gunnar's face darkened. And if she brings the wrath of her people down upon us, then we will face it as we have faced all challenges, Wulfgar said, his tone ending further discussion. Inside his home, the warmth of the central hearth enveloped them. The space was simple but befitting a chieftain, weapons and shields adorning the walls, finely woven tapestries depicting the deeds of his ancestors, and carved wooden furniture that spoke of skill and prosperity. Jida, he called to the old woman tending the fire, bring dry clothes and food for our guest. As Jida shuffled away to obey, Nessa stood trembling, taking in the strange surroundings. Why help me? She asked softly. Your kind raid our shores, kill our people. Wulfgar's jaw tightened. Your kind have done the same to us. But you are not your people today, and I am not mine. You are one woman who has survived Rant's grasp, and I am one man who will not send you back to the sea goddess so soon. Jida returned with a woolen dress, simple but well made, and a length of linen for drying. Come, girl, she said in halting Saxon. Get those wet things off before death finds you. Wulfgar turned away, offering Nessa privacy as Jida helped her change. When he turned back, she looked transformed, her dark hair combed and beginning to dry, her slender form no longer hidden by the sodden mass of her ruined dress. She is highborn, Jida murmured in their native tongue. Look at her hands, never worked today. And that arm ring is gold, not bronze. Wulfgar nodded. Bring food, and then spread word that I will speak to the council tonight. After Jida left, he gestured for Nessa to sit near the fire. Your arm ring, he said, nodding toward the golden band. It bears marks I do not recognize. Nessa's hand moved instinctively to cover it. It was my mother's. A symbol of my family's position. And what position is that? She hesitated before answering. My father is then to King Edmund of East Anglia. I was travelling to be married to a lord in Northumbria, a political union. Wulfgar's expression darkened. So she was valuable indeed, a prize that would bring Saxon warriors in force if they discovered her whereabouts. The feud with the Thundershield clan was burden enough without adding Saxon armies to his concerns. You understand what this means, he said gravely. Your father's men will search for you. If they discover you here, they will come with fire and sword, believing we took you in a raid. Nessa nodded slowly. Then I should leave as soon as possible. And go where? Winter approaches. The seas grow more dangerous, and the land offers little mercy to a woman alone. Wulfgar sighed heavily. No, you must remain until spring at least. By then, perhaps a solution will present itself. A knock at the door interrupted them. Gunnar entered without waiting for permission, his weathered face grim. The elders wish to speak with you now, he said, casting a suspicious glance toward Nessa. They are concerned about harboring a Saxon noblewoman. Wulfgar rose. Stay here, he told Nessa. Jida will watch over you. I must convince old men that one woman need not bring down the fury of two peoples upon our heads. The thing gathered in the great hall, torchlight casting long shadows across the faces of clan elders and prominent warriors. Wulfgar stood before them, steady under their scrutiny as he explained Nessa's arrival and identity. You bring danger to our doorstep, said Eric One-Eye, the oldest among them. The god sent this woman not as a gift but as a test of your judgment, which you have failed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. What would you have me do? Wulfgar challenged. Leave her to die on the shore? Send her into the wilderness alone? Such actions would dishonor us before the gods. Honor will warm no hearths when Saxon armies burn our village to ash, countered Thora, the widow of the previous chieftain's brother and a respected voice in council. The woman could be ransomed, suggested Steiger the trader. Send word to her father that she lives and name a price for her safe return. And reveal ourselves as her captors. Wulfgar shook his head. The Saxon lords will not pay ransom, they will gather their forces and attack, believing we raided their ships and took their women. Then what would you propose, chieftain? Asked Gunnar, his tone bordering on insolence. Wulfgar's mind worked quickly. Winter comes. The seas will soon be too treacherous for Saxon ships to reach our shores, even if they knew where to look. We keep her here, treated with honor as a guest, until the spring thaw. Then I will personally see her return to her people, explaining the truth of how she came to be among us. Eirik scoffed. And you believe they will listen? Saxons see only our axes, not our honor. Perhaps, Wulfgar conceded. But I will not abandon our ways out of fear. We are wolves, not cowering hounds. After much debate, the council reluctantly agreed to Wulfgar's plan, though many remained skeptical. As the assembly dispersed, Gunnar lingered, his expression troubled. You speak of honor, he said quietly, but I wonder if there is more. I saw how you looked at the Saxon woman. Wulfgar stiffened. She is under my protection, nothing more. Remember your place, Gunnar. My place is beside my chieftain, guarding him from all threats, even those he does not see. Gunnar's voice lowered further. The Thundershield feud has cost us many lives. Do not let a pair of blue eyes blind you to the blood debt that remains unpaid. As Gunnar departed, Wulfgar stood alone in the great hall, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down upon him. His father's dying words echoed in his mind, love brings only death to a Wolftooth. He had never questioned that belief, had embraced it as truth. But for the first time, a seed of doubt took root in his heart. Days turned to weeks as winter descended upon the village. Nessa, initially kept apart from daily life, gradually integrated into the rhythms of the clan. Wulfgar had assigned her quarters in his own home, the safest place for her, he reasoned, though separated by a woven screen for propriety. He observed with growing admiration how she adapted to their ways. Though clearly unaccustomed to physical labor, she worked alongside the women without complaint, learning their language with remarkable speed. Her willingness to participate in daily tasks slowly won over many who had initially regarded her with suspicion. One evening, as snow fell heavily outside, Wulfgar returned from hunting to find Nessa seated by the hearth, carefully stitching a tear in one of his tunics. Her dark hair was braided in the style of Viking women, and she wore a simple woolen dress with a borrowed brooch securing it at the shoulder. You need not mend my clothes, he said, hanging his snow-dusted cloak near the door. Nessa looked up, her needle pausing mid-stitch. Jida has been kind enough to teach me. I wish to be useful. She held up the tunic. Your people's stitchwork is different from ours, stronger, more practical. Like everything else you do. Wulfgar sat across from her, studying her face in the firelight. The fragile, weeping woman he'd found on the shore had been replaced by someone more resilient, though no less beautiful. You adapt well to our ways, he observed. Better than I expected of a Saxon noblewoman. A small smile curved her lips. Perhaps there is more to me than you assumed, just as there is more to your people than tales of bloodthirsty raiders. And what have you learned of us? He asked, genuinely curious. Nessa set aside her sewing. That you value strength, but also wisdom. That your bonds of kinship run deep. That your gods are present in every aspect of your lives. She paused. And that there is a shadow that hangs over you, personally. Jida speaks of a blood feud, though she will tell me nothing more. Wulfgar's expression darkened. It is not your concern. It concerns everyone in this village, she countered gently. I see how it weighs on you, how the mention of the Thundershield name brings silence to any gathering. 3 generations of my family have died by Thundershield hands, Wulfgar said, his voice low and dangerous. My grandfather, my uncle, my father. The debt must be paid in kind. And then what? Nessa asked. When the last Thundershield lies dead, will it bring your father back? Will it ease the burden you carry? Anger flashed in Wulfgar's eyes. You know nothing of our ways. Blood demands blood, this is our law, our honor. I know more than you think, she said softly. My own father has spent his life in service to a king whose father was killed in a Viking raid. The cycle of vengeance has claimed as many Saxon lives as Norse ones. She leaned forward, her gaze intent. Does it never end? The question hung between them, unanswered. Wulfgar rose abruptly. Rest well, he said stiffly. Tomorrow brings the winter solstice feast. You will attend as my guest. As he strode away, Wulfgar fought to quell the turmoil her words had stirred within him. No one had ever dared question the righteousness of his family's feud, not even in the privacy of his thoughts had he allowed such heresy. Yet her simple question echoed in his mind, does it never end? The winter solstice celebration transformed the village. Torches blazed against the long darkness, and the great hall overflowed with food, mead, and boisterous company. Nessa entered at Wulfgar's side, dressed in a borrowed blue gown that brought out the color of her eyes, her hair adorned with small braids in the Norse style. They stare, she whispered nervously as heads turned their way. Let them, Wulfgar replied. You honor our celebration with your presence. Hold your head high. The feast began with sacrifices to the gods, especially Freya for fertility in the coming year. Wulfgar performed the rituals as chieftain, his deep voice carrying the ancient words with authority and reverence. Nessa watched, fascinated by the blending of violence and spirituality that seemed to define Norse life. As the night progressed and the mead flowed freely, the initial tension surrounding Nessa's presence eased. She conversed haltingly in their language, her earnest attempts earning approving nods from the elders. Children, always the first to accept a stranger, crowded around her to touch her strange clothes and ask about her homeland. You've won over half the village, observed Thora, appearing at Wulfgar's side as he watched Nessa from across the room. She has a gift for making people feel heard. Wulfgar nodded. She has strength, though not the kind we typically value. Be careful, chieftain, Thora warned. I see how your eyes follow her. Remember that spring will come, and she must return to her people. I have not forgotten, he said tersely. The celebration shifted as instruments were brought forth, drums, pipes, and stringed lyres. The center of the hall cleared for dancing, warriors and maidens forming lines for traditional reels that grew increasingly elaborate as the night wore on. Gunnar, his face flushed with mead, approached Nessa and extended his hand. Dance with us, Saxon. Show us what your people do for celebration. All eyes turned to her. Nessa hesitated, then stood and took his hand. I will try to learn your steps, she said, loudly enough for all to hear. Though I fear I may bring shame to both our peoples with my clumsiness. Laughter rippled through the hall, breaking the last of the tension. As the music began again, Gunnar led her through the basic movements, her initial awkwardness giving way to fluid grace as she quickly mastered the patterns. Wulfgar watched, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest as she spun between warriors, her laughter ringing clear above the music. When the dance ended and another began, he found himself moving forward without conscious thought. May I? He asked, extending his hand to her. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by a smile that reached her eyes. I would be honored, chieftain. The music slowed to a more stately rhythm as they moved together. Wulfgar was conscious of every eye upon them, of the significance of a chieftain dancing with a Saxon noblewoman. Yet in that moment, politics and feud seemed distant concerns compared to the warmth of her hand in his, the slight flush upon her cheeks. "Your people celebrate life fiercely," she said as they circled each other, palms touching. "We must," he replied. "Life is short and glory fleeting. Only the tales told of us remain." "And what tale will be told of the Viking chieftain and the shipwrecked Saxon?" she asked, her voice dropping so only he could hear. Before he could answer, the doors to the great hall burst open. Snow swirled around a figure who staggered in, bloodied and exhausted, one of Wulfgar's scouts. "Chieftain," the man gasped. "Thundershield warriors, approaching from the north. At least 30 strong." The music died instantly. Wulfgar released Nessa and strode forward. "How far?" "They make camp in the high valley. They will reach us by midday tomorrow." Murmurs spread through the hall as warriors instinctively moved toward their weapons. Wulfgar raised his hand for silence. "This is no raid," he declared. "They come openly, in winter, when they know we are gathered. Bjorn Thundershield wants a reckoning." His gaze swept the assembly. "And he shall have one. Prepare defenses, but do not strike first. I would know his purpose before blood is shed." As the hall erupted into activity, Wulfgar turned back to find Nessa watching him, concern etched across her features. "Is this because of me?" she asked. "Do they somehow know I am here?" "No," he said grimly. "This is the feud that has claimed my family for generations. Bjorn Thundershield comes to settle an old score, one written in the blood of my ancestors." Dawn broke cold and clear over the village. Wulfgar stood at its edge, warriors arrayed behind him as the Thundershield party approached across the frozen field that separated their positions. Snow crunched beneath their boots, breath fogging in the winter air. Bjorn Thundershield led them, a massive man with a graying red beard and cold eyes. He stopped a spear's throw from Wulfgar, his gaze assessing. "Wulfgar Wolftooth," he called, his voice carrying across the distance. "I come to end what our grandfathers began." "Many have tried," Wulfgar replied evenly. "Their bones now feed the ravens." Bjorn's laugh held no humor. "Yet here I stand, as do you. Perhaps the gods tire of our quarrel." He gestured to his men. "I come not for battle today, but for truth. Will you hear me speak?" Murmurs rippled through Wulfgar's warriors. Gunnar stepped forward. "It is a trick, chieftain. The moment we lower our guard, if I wanted your village burned," Bjorn interrupted, "I would have brought 200 men, not 30. I seek words before weapons." Wulfgar studied the older man, searching for deception and finding instead a weariness that mirrored his own. "Speak then, but know that treachery will be answered with death." Bjorn nodded and approached alone, stopping within arm's reach. Up close, the lines of age and hardship were carved deep into his face. "I have buried 2 sons to this feud," he said quietly. "My eldest fell to your father's axe 5 winters ago. My youngest to your own hand last summer. As my father fell to your brother's sword," Wulfgar countered. "Blood calls for blood. And where does it end?" Bjorn asked, the same question Nessa had posed, now coming from his oldest enemy. "I am an old man now, with no more sons to sacrifice to our hatred. You are young, with no heir to carry your vengeance when you fall. Our clans dwindle while others grow strong around us." Wulfgar's eyes narrowed. "What are you proposing?" "A thing. A formal council between our clans, with neutral witnesses." We will lay bare the origins of this feud and seek judgment from the gods themselves through trial. Bjorn's gaze was steady. If I am found at fault, I will submit to your justice. If you are, you will submit to mine. And if neither is at fault, then perhaps we find a way to end 3 generations of death. Bjorn glanced back at his warriors. I bring a token of good faith. Your cousin, taken captive in our last skirmish. He lives and is treated with honor. A young man was brought forward, his hands bound but his body unmarked by torture. Fry Bjorn, son of Wulfgar's mother's brother, believed dead these past 6 months. Wulfgar's resolve wavered. A thing was sacred, the judgment binding on all parties. If there was even a chance to end the cycle of vengeance without exterminating the Thundershield line. When? He asked. The spring equinox, Bjorn replied. On neutral ground, the sacred island where the 3 clan territories meet. Bring 10 warriors, as will I. And we will have witnesses from the Ravenspair clan to ensure fair judgment. Wulfgar considered the proposal, aware of his warriors watching, waiting for his decision. The feud had defined his life, shaped every choice since childhood. To consider ending it through means other than total victory seemed impossible, yet. I accept, he said finally. We will meet at the spring equinox for judgment. Bjorn extended his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Wulfgar clasped it, the first peaceful contact between their clans in living memory. Until spring, then, Bjorn said, releasing his grip. Keep your axes sharp, Wolftooth. Peace may yet prove more difficult than war. As the Thundershield party departed, Fry Bjorn was released into Wulfgar's custody. The young man fell into his chieftain's embrace, tears streaming into his beard. I thought never to see home again, he choked out. You are returned to us, Wulfgar assured him. Come, there is much to tell. Back in the village, reactions to the proposed thing were mixed. Many warriors felt cheated of vengeance, while others, particularly those who had lost sons and husbands to the feud, cautiously welcomed the possibility of peace. Wulfgar found Nessa waiting anxiously by his longhouse door. Relief washed over her face when she saw him unharmed. No blood was shed, she asked. Not today, he confirmed, guiding her inside where they could speak privately. He explained Bjorn's proposal and his acceptance of the thing. Nessa listened intently. This is good, she said when he finished. A chance to break the cycle. Or a chance to finally determine which clan must be destroyed, Wulfgar countered. She studied him, disappointment evident in her eyes. You still seek only vengeance, even when offered peace. I seek justice, he corrected. My father died with Thundershield steel in his heart. That debt remains unpaid. And if the thing reveals that the original wrong was committed by your ancestors, she challenged. Will you accept that justice, even if it means acknowledging that generations of killing were based on a lie? Wulfgar turned away, unable to meet her gaze. The origin of the feud is clear. Bjorn's grandfather murdered mine over a disputed hunting ground. All know this. All know the story told by your clan, Nessa said softly. Just as all Saxons know the stories of Viking brutality, and all Vikings know tales of Saxon treachery. Stories change with each telling, Wulfgar. Truth often lies buried beneath generations of hatred. Her words struck uncomfortably close to doubts he had never allowed himself to voice. What if there was more to the feud than he had been told? What if generations of Wolftooths and Thundershields had died for a cause neither fully understood? You speak dangerously for a woman dependent on my protection, he said, harsher than he intended. Hurt flashed across her face, quickly masked. Forgive me, she said, lowering her eyes. I forget my place. the submissive gesture bothered him more than her challenge had. In the weeks of her stay, he had come to value her forthright nature, her willingness to question what others accepted without thought. "No," he sighed. "It is I who should seek forgiveness. You speak from wisdom, not impertinence." He moved closer, cautiously taking her hands in his. "You have opened my eyes to possibilities I never considered. Perhaps this thing will reveal truths long hidden." Her fingers tightened around his. "I pray it brings peace rather than more bloodshed." Wulfgar found himself lost in the depths of her blue eyes, suddenly aware of how close they stood. Something had been growing between them these past weeks, something neither had named but both felt with increasing intensity. "Nessa," he began, his voice rough with emotion. A knock at the door broke the moment. Gunnar entered without waiting for permission, his expression darkening when he saw their clasped hands. Wulfgar released her immediately, stepping back. "The council demands your presence," Gunnar said coldly. "There are concerns about the thing agreement." "I will come," Wulfgar replied. As Gunnar departed, he turned back to Nessa. "We will speak later." She nodded, though uncertainty shadowed her face. "Be careful, Wulfgar. Not everyone welcomes the possibility of peace." Her warning followed him as he made his way to face the elders, its significance not fully clear until much later. Winter's grip on the land slowly loosened as weeks passed. The village settled into an uneasy rhythm, preparing simultaneously for the spring thing and the possibility that it might fail. Warriors trained daily, weapons were mended and sharpened, and scouts monitored Thunder Shield movements for any sign of treachery. Through it all, Nessa's presence became increasingly woven into the fabric of clan life. Children sought her out for stories of her homeland, women included her in their work and gossip, and even some of the warriors grudgingly admitted that she had courage worth respecting. Only Gunnar maintained his suspicion, watching her interactions with Wulfgar with narrowed eyes. One crisp afternoon, as the first hints of spring softened the air, Wulfgar found Nessa by the shore where he had first discovered her. She stood gazing out at the sea, her cloak billowing in the wind. "Do you long for home?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. She turned, a sad smile touching her lips. "I think of my father. He must believe me dead." Guilt tugged at Wulfgar's conscience. In the months of her stay, he had made no effort to send word to her people, telling himself the winter seas made such communication impossible. But the truth was more selfish, he did not want to hasten her departure. "When the thing is concluded," he said, "I will see you safely returned, with proper escort and gifts to compensate for your ordeal." Nessa's smile faded. "Is that what this has been? An ordeal to be compensated for?" "You know it has become more," he admitted, his voice low. "For both of us." "And yet you speak of my return as if it is inevitable," she said, turning fully to face him. "As if there could be no other path." Wulfgar struggled with words that had never come easily to him. "What other path could there be? You are the daughter of a Saxon thegn, promised in marriage to strengthen alliances. I am a Viking chieftain with blood debts yet unpaid. Those are the paths laid before us by others," Nessa said. "But what if we chose differently?" The question hung between them, full of dangerous possibility. Wulfgar had never considered defying the expectations of his position, the duties inherited with his father's mantle. Yet standing before this woman who had survived the sea's fury and his people's suspicion, he found himself imagining a future previously unthinkable. "The gods have their own plans," he said finally. "Perhaps that is why they sent you to my shore." "And what do you believe those plans to be?" she asked. Instead of answering with words, Wulfgar stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His rough hands gently cradled her face as he lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened with months of unspoken longing. Nessa responded with equal fervor, her arms encircling his neck as she pressed herself against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, the world seemed altered, brighter somehow, despite the overcast sky. "That is what I believe," Wulfgar said hoarsely. A throat cleared behind them. They turned to find Jida watching with knowing eyes. "The gods may approve," the old woman said dryly, "but the village will talk. Come inside before you give them more to gossip about." As they followed Jida back to the village, Wulfgar's hand found Nessa's, their fingers intertwining. For the first time since his father's death, he felt something like hope, not just for himself, but for his clan's future. Perhaps the cycle of vengeance could indeed be broken, replaced by something stronger than hatred. But as they approached the village center, the hope was short-lived. A commotion drew their attention to a group of warriors surrounding a blooded messenger who had just arrived. "Chieftain, called Gunnar. News from the south." Wulfgar released Nessa's hand and strode forward. "Speak," he commanded the messenger. "Saxon ships," the man gasped. 3 days' sail from here. Warriors in great numbers, led by a thegn who searches for his daughter." His gaze shifted to Nessa, recognition dawning. "For her?" A heavy silence fell over the gathered crowd. All eyes turned to Nessa, whose face had gone pale with shock. "My father," she whispered. "But how could he know I survived? That I was here?" Gunnar's voice cut through the murmurs. "Perhaps because someone told him." He stepped forward, accusation hardening his features. "Have you been sending messages, Saxon? Using our hospitality while plotting our destruction?" "No," Nessa protested. "I would never." "Enough," Wulfgar commanded. "There will be no accusations without proof." He turned to the messenger. "How many ships? How many men?" "5 ships. Perhaps 200 warriors. They have raided 2 coastal villages already, demanding information about a noblewoman taken by Vikings." Wulfgar's mind raced. 200 Saxon warriors, convinced that his clan had raided their ships and taken their women. It would be slaughter if they reached the village. "Prepare defenses," he ordered. "Send word to neighboring clans for aid." He turned to Nessa, whose eyes were wide with fear. "Come. We must speak privately." Inside his longhouse, away from accusing eyes, Wulfgar paced like a caged wolf. "Tell me the truth," he demanded. "Did you find some way to send word to your father?" "No," Nessa said firmly. "I swear by your gods and mine. I have sent no messages, spoken to no travelers." Tears filled her eyes. "But now my father comes with sword and flame, believing me captive or worse. He will not listen to reason if he thinks I've been harmed." Wulfgar stopped his pacing. "Then you must go to him. Before he reaches our shores." Shock registered on her face. "You would send me away?" "To save my people," he said, the words tasting bitter. "And to save you from witnessing what will happen if Saxon and Norse blood is spilled over a misunderstanding." Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by determination. "Yes. I must intercept him, explain the truth of how you saved me, how your people sheltered me." "Gunnar will prepare our fastest ship," Wulfgar said, already moving toward the door. Nessa caught his arm. "Come with me," she pleaded. "Meet my father honorably, as a chieftain. Show him that there can be peace between our peoples." Wulfgar hesitated. To place himself in the hands of Saxon warriors, to trust that her word would protect him from their vengeance, it went against every instinct of self-preservation. Yet the alternative was worse, watching her sail away, perhaps never to return, while preparing his people for a battle they might not survive. Very well, he decided. I will accompany you with a small guard. We sail with the morning tide. Relief washed over her face. She threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. Thank you. I swear you will not regret this trust. As he returned her embrace, Wulfgar wondered if he had finally made the choice that would fulfill his father's dark prophecy: love brings only death to a Wolftooth. But even if death awaited, he could no longer imagine returning to a life without her. The small Viking ship cut through the waves, its sails straining in the wind as they raced to intercept the Saxon fleet. Wulfgar stood at the prow, watching the horizon for any sign of their quarry. Behind him, 6 of his most trusted warriors maintained a wary vigilance, while Nessa huddled beneath a woolen cloak, her face pale but determined. Gunnar had argued vehemently against this plan, calling it suicide to place their chieftain in Saxon hands. They will not listen, he had warned. They will see only a Viking responsible for their lady's disappearance. But Wulfgar had overruled him, appointing him temporary leader in his absence. Prepare the village for defense, he had instructed. But wait for my return before taking offensive action. Now, as the cold sea spray stung his face, Wulfgar wondered if he had doomed himself and his men for the love of a woman, exactly as his father had warned. Yet when he looked back at Nessa, her eyes meeting his with unwavering faith, he could not bring himself to regret his choice. By midday, sails appeared on the horizon, 5 ships in formation, unmistakably Saxon in design. Wulfgar ordered their own sail lowered, a white cloth raised in its place to signal peaceful intent. They may attack regardless, he warned Nessa as the Saxon ships drew nearer. Be prepared to call out to them, to make yourself known before arrows fly. As the distance closed, tension mounted among his warriors. Hands rested on weapons, though all had been instructed not to draw unless directly attacked. The lead Saxon ship altered course to intercept them, warriors visible along its rails, bows at the ready. When they came within hailing distance, Nessa moved to the ship's side, throwing back her hood and raising her arms. "Father," she called across the water. "Father, it is Nessa. I am safe." For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a tall figure moved to the prow of the Saxon vessel, a man with graying dark hair and a bearing that marked him as nobility. His face, visible now, displayed shock that quickly transformed into joy. "Nessa? By God's mercy!" He turned to his men, shouting orders that resulted in their weapons being lowered. As their ships drew alongside one another, then Tidewell's eyes fixed on Wulfgar with suspicion. "Who is this man? Has he harmed you?" "No, father," Nessa replied earnestly. "This is Wulfgar Wolftooth, chieftain of the clan that saved me when our ship was wrecked in the winter storm. They have shown me nothing but kindness and honor." Disbelief was evident on the then's face. "Vikings showing kindness to a Saxon noblewoman? You expect me to believe this?" "It is true," she insisted. "Let us come aboard and I will explain everything." After a tense negotiation, it was agreed that Nessa and Wulfgar would board the Saxon ship, while his warriors remained on their own vessel, effectively hostages to ensure their chieftain's safety. Stepping onto the Saxon deck, Wulfgar felt the weight of hostile stares from every direction. He kept his hand deliberately away from his weapon, his posture proud but non-threatening. Nessa immediately embraced her father, tears flowing freely as they reunited. "I thought you lost forever," then Tidewell said, holding his daughter at arm's length to examine her. "When wreckage from your ship was discovered, when bodies washed ashore," his voice broke. "But now you are returned to me, praise God." "Because of him," Nessa said, turning to indicate Wulfgar. "He found me half drowned on the shore and took me into his home. His people sheltered me through the winter when no ship could safely return me to you. The then's eyes narrowed as he assessed the Viking chieftain. Is this true? It is, Wulfgar confirmed. Your daughter has been treated as an honored guest, not a captive. I come now to return her safely to her family and prevent bloodshed based on misunderstanding. For a long moment, Nessa Tidewell studied him, searching for deception. Finally, he nodded slowly. My daughter has always been a good judge of character. If she says you saved her, then I owe you a debt of gratitude. Relief washed through Wulfgar, though he maintained his stoic expression. No debt is owed for doing what honor demands. Nevertheless, the Then replied, I would reward your protection of my daughter. Name your price. Before Wulfgar could respond, Nessa stepped forward. Father, there is more you should know. She took a deep breath, glancing at Wulfgar before continuing. During my time with the Wolftooth clan, I have come to care deeply for their chieftain. And he for me. Shocked silence fell over the deck. Then Tidewell's face darkened with disbelief that quickly turned to anger. This is absurd, he sputtered. You are promised to Lord Edwin of Northumbria. The alliance is sealed, the bride price paid. An alliance I never chose, Nessa countered, her voice steady despite her father's growing rage. I ask you to consider a different alliance, one with the Wolftooth clan. Think of the benefits: protection for our coastal villages from other raiders, trade opportunities, peace where there has only been conflict. The Then looked from his daughter to Wulfgar and back, incredulity giving way to calculation. You propose I break faith with a powerful Saxon lord to ally with Vikings? The very people who have terrorized our shores for generations. Not all Vikings raid Saxon lands, Wulfgar interjected. My clan focuses our efforts northward and on trade. We have no quarrel with your people. Until now, the Then said pointedly. When you've seduced my daughter. Wulfgar stiffened at the accusation. I have treated Nessa with nothing but respect. What has grown between us was neither planned nor forced. Nessa placed her hand on her father's arm. Please, father. Before you reject this possibility, speak with Wulfgar. Learn of his people. Consider what peace between our kinds might mean for future generations. A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the creak of wood and the slap of waves against the hull. Finally, the Then exhaled heavily. I will hear him speak, he conceded. But make no mistake, I have not agreed to this madness. As they retired to the ship's cabin for private discussion, Wulfgar felt the weight of fate pressing upon him. The next few hours would determine not only his future with Nessa but potentially the relationship between their peoples for generations to come. The conversation was long and often heated. Then Tidewell questioned Wulfgar extensively about his clan, their resources, their conflicts, particularly the blood feud with the Thunder Shields, which he viewed as evidence of Viking barbarism. You speak of alliance while engaged in a generations-long cycle of vengeance with your own kind, he challenged. Why should I believe you capable of maintaining peace with Saxons? Because the thing may end that feud come spring, Wulfgar replied. I have agreed to binding judgment on its origins and resolution. The Then raised an eyebrow. And if that judgment requires you to end hostilities without achieving vengeance for your father's death, then I will abide by it, Wulfgar said firmly. The welfare of my clan matters more than personal vengeance. It was a truth he had only recently accepted, one that Nessa had helped him recognize. The realization startled him even as he spoke it aloud. As night fell, no firm agreement had been reached, but neither had the Then rejected the possibility outright. It was decided that Wulfgar would return to his ship while Nessa remained with her father, and discussions would continue the following day as they sailed together toward the Wolftooth settlement. Before they parted, Nessa managed a brief moment alone with Wulfgar on the deck, the stars emerging above them in the darkening sky. "You spoke well," she said quietly. "He listens even when he appears not to. Will he agree?" Wulfgar asked, taking her hands in his. "I don't know. But he has not forbidden it outright, which gives me hope." She squeezed his hands. "Whatever happens, know that my heart remains with you, Wulfgar Wolftooth." He drew her close, memorizing the feel of her in his arms in case fate decreed this their last embrace. "And mine with you, Nessa Tidewell. May the gods guide your father's wisdom." As Wulfgar returned to his ship and they set course for his village, the future remained uncertain. But for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a path forward not stained with blood, one where ancient hatreds might give way to new beginnings. The return to the Wolftooth settlement brought unexpected turmoil. While Wulfgar had been pursuing diplomacy with the Saxons, Gunnar had been stoking fear among the warriors, convincing many that their chieftain had abandoned them to appease the enemy. When the Saxon ships appeared on the horizon, panic spread through the village. Women gathered children, men reached for weapons, and by the time Wulfgar disembarked, the head of the Saxons, to explain the situation, he faced not a welcome but an accusation. "You bring our enemies to our doorstep," Gunnar charged, standing before a gathering of warriors and elders. "All for the sake of a Saxon woman who has bewitched you." "I bring potential allies," Wulfgar countered, addressing the assembled clan rather than Gunnar alone. "Thegn Tidewell, father of the woman we sheltered, comes in peace to discuss terms of friendship between our peoples." Skeptical murmurs rippled through the crowd. "What terms?" demanded Eric One-Eye. "What do we gain from Saxon friendship when we might soon face Thundershield vengeance?" "Protection on our southern borders," Wulfgar explained. "Trade opportunities. And perhaps an end to the cycle of raid and counter-raid that claims lives on both sides." He did not mention the personal stake he had in these negotiations, the hope that Thegn Tidewell might consent to a union between himself and Nessa. That would come later, if the initial discussions proved fruitful. "And what does the Saxon Thegn expect in return?" Gunnar pressed. "Our submission? Our conversion to their Christ God. He expects only what any father would, assurance of his daughter's safety and our word that we will not raid Saxon settlements under his protection." Wulfgar's gaze swept the assembly. "Is that so much to ask for the promise of peace?" Before further debate could ensue, lookouts called the approaching Saxon ships. Wulfgar turned to his people one last time. "Show them the honor and hospitality that has made our clan respected among our own kind," he urged. "Let them see that we are more than the raiders of their nightmares." The meeting between Saxon and Viking was tense but controlled. Thegn Tidewell came ashore with a small guard, while the bulk of his warriors remained on their ships, a compromise that allowed for discussion without placing either side at a significant disadvantage. Nessa walked beside her father, now dressed in Saxon clothing provided from his ship, though she had kept the Norse-style braids in her hair, a small but significant gesture that did not go unnoticed by the watching villagers. Over the next 3 days, negotiations proceeded cautiously. The Thegn was given a tour of the settlement, observed their shipbuilding techniques, and even participated in a feast held in his honor. Throughout, Wulfgar noted the calculating assessment behind the man's cordial demeanor. He was neither dismissing the possibility of alliance nor committing to it. On the evening of the 3rd day, as they sat in Wulfgar's longhouse with just Nessa present, the Thegn finally broached the subject they had all been circling. "My daughter tells me she wishes to stay with you," he said bluntly. "That she would forsake her duty to our family and her promised husband for a life among Vikings." Wulfgar met the man's gaze steadily. "And what have you decided?" "That depends on what you offer in return," the Thegn replied. "Not for her hand, she is not livestock to be bartered, but for breaking faith with Lord Edwin, whose wrath I will surely face." It was a calculated response, acknowledging his daughter's wishes while protecting his political interests. Wulfgar respected the man's shrewdness. An alliance sealed by marriage, he offered. Formal recognition of your authority over Saxon coastal settlements. Protection from other Viking raiders. And trade access to northern markets through our networks. The thegn nodded slowly. "And what of children born of such a union? Will they be raised in the old ways or the new? Will they worship your gods or ours?" Nessa leaned forward. "They will know both," she said firmly. "As I have come to know and respect Norse ways without abandoning my own faith." A knock interrupted them. Jida entered without waiting for permission, her weathered face grave. "Riders approach," she announced. "Thunder Shield colors." Wulfgar rose immediately. "How many?" "Just 3. They carry the white branch. A peace token. Unexpected, especially given the timing." "Bring them to the Great Hall," Wulfgar ordered. "And ensure our Saxon guests are treated with respect in their presence." The then's eyes narrowed. "These are your blood enemies? The ones with whom you feuded for generations?" "Yes," Wulfgar confirmed. "Their arrival now is significant." "Then I shall witness this meeting," the thegn decided, standing. "It will tell me much about how Vikings honor their agreements, or break them." When they entered the Great Hall, Bjorn Thundershield already waited, flanked by 2 warriors. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of Saxons among the Wolftooth clan but betrayed no other reaction. "Wulfgar Wolftooth," he greeted formally. "I come ahead of the appointed time because grave news could not wait for the spring thing." Tension rippled through the hall. Wulfgar stepped forward. "Speak, then. What news brings you to enemy territory under peace token?" Bjorn's weathered face was solemn. 2 nights passed, a fire swept through our main hall. Ancient records were destroyed, among them, the original account of the dispute between our grandfathers. Murmurs spread through the gathered observers. "What relevance has this to our feud?" Wulfgar demanded. "Great relevance," Bjorn replied. "For as we salvaged what remained, we discovered this." He gestured to one of his warriors, who stepped forward bearing a small, partially burned chest. From it, Bjorn withdrew a weathered parchment, its edges blackened but its center intact. "This is a letter," he explained, "written by my grandfather to yours before the first blood was spilled. It speaks not of land disputes but of a proposed marriage alliance between our clans, one that was arranged but never fulfilled because of a terrible misunderstanding." Shocked silence fell over the hall. Wulfgar stared at the document, unable to process the implications. "You lie," he said finally, though without conviction. "Read it yourself," Bjorn challenged, extending the parchment. "It is written in the old runes, by my grandfather's own hand." With careful movements, Wulfgar accepted the document. The language was archaic but clear enough, a formal offer of his grandfather's sister in marriage to strengthen ties between neighboring clans, followed by arrangements for bride price and celebration. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then how did blood come to be spilled?" Bjorn's expression darkened. "The woman, your grandfather's sister, died of fever before the union could be formalized. Your grandfather believed she had been poisoned by my family to avoid fulfilling the agreement. He attacked my grandfather during what was meant to be a meeting to discuss postponement of the marriage." Wulfgar looked up from the document, his world shifting beneath his feet. 3 generations of death, for a misunderstanding. "So it would seem," Bjorn confirmed grimly. "Had this document been discovered sooner, perhaps our fathers and sons might still live." The implications crashed over Wulfgar like a wave. All the hatred, all the vengeance, all the blood spilled, based not on treachery but on tragic coincidence and hasty judgment. His father had died avenging a wrong that had never truly existed. From the corner of his eye, he saw Nessa watching him intently, her expression a mixture of compassion and anticipation. Beside her, her father observed the proceedings with keen interest. In that moment, Wulfgar faced the most significant choice of his life. He could reject the evidence, declare it a forgery, and continue the cycle of vengeance that had defined his existence. Or he could accept the truth, however painful, and break the chain that had bound both clans in blood for generations. "If what you say is true," he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil within, "then too much blood has been spilled for nothing. It must end." Bjorn's weathered face showed cautious relief. "Then you accept the evidence? You will abide by what it reveals?" "I will," Wulfgar declared, loud enough for all to hear. "Let it be known that from this day forward, the feud between Wolftooth and Thundershield is ended. No more blood will be shed for wrongs based on misunderstanding." A collective gasp went through the hall, followed by murmurs of disbelief, relief, and in some cases, disappointment. Generations of hatred could not be erased with a single declaration. Gunnar pushed forward from the crowd. "You cannot mean this, chieftain." "Your father's death, my father died believing a lie," Wulfgar cut him off. "I will not continue to sacrifice our people for that same lie." He turned back to Bjorn. "What do you propose to seal this peace?" The older chieftain straightened. "The alliance our grandfathers intended, through marriage. My daughter Frydis is of age. A union between our clans would heal old wounds and strengthen both our peoples. A reasonable proposal under normal circumstances, exactly what would have been suggested at the thing. But circumstances were no longer normal." Wulfgar's gaze shifted to Nessa, whose face had gone pale at Bjorn's words. Then Tidewell stepped forward, seizing the moment with political acumen. "It seems I arrive at a fortuitous time," he said smoothly. "I too come to discuss alliance through marriage, between my daughter and chieftain Wolftooth." Bjorn's eyes widened as he took in the full implication. "You would wed a Saxon?" he asked Wulfgar incredulously. "I would," Wulfgar confirmed, moving to stand beside Nessa. "My heart has chosen, and my mind sees the wisdom in bridging not just the divide between our clans, but between our peoples." For a long moment, Bjorn stared at them, calculation evident in his gaze. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a rough sound that held more relief than humor. 3 generations of killing ended not just with peace but with change beyond imagining. He shook his head in wonder. "Perhaps the gods have a greater sense of humor than we knew." Turning to Nessa Tidewell, he offered a slight bow. "It seems our grandsons and granddaughters may share both Norse and Saxon blood. A future neither of us could have envisioned." The thegn nodded cautiously. "If we forge this path, others may follow. There has been enough death between our peoples." As the implications of this momentous shift rippled through the assembly, Wulfgar felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, the burden of vengeance he had carried since his father's death, the belief that love would bring only destruction to his line. In its place came something unfamiliar but welcome, hope. The wedding took place at the spring equinox, the very day originally set for the thing that would have judged the blood feud. Instead of a tribunal seeking justice for past wrongs, it became a celebration of future peace. 3 groups gathered on the sacred island where the clan territories met, the Wolftooth clan in their finest attire, the Thundershield clan, former enemies now coming as allies, and a contingent of Saxons led by Nessa Tidewell, who had negotiated terms of alliance that satisfied both his political needs and his daughter's happiness. The ceremony blended traditions from both cultures. Wulfgar wore the ceremonial garb of a Norse chieftain, a fine tunic adorned with silver embroidery, a cloak clasped with wolves' heads, and his father's sword at his hip. Nessa wore a Saxon bride's gown of finest linen, but over it a Norse bridal crown adorned with spring flowers and silver charms for fertility and protection. As was custom, they exchanged swords, Wulfgar presenting her with an elegant blade made specially for her hand, while she gave him a Saxon sword that had belonged to her grandfather, symbolizing the trust between their peoples. Rings were exchanged, vows spoken in both languages, and blood mingled in a shared cup to bind their fates together. Bjorn Thundershield stood as witness alongside thegn Tidewell, former enemies united in support of a union that would have seemed impossible months before. When the final words were spoken and Wulfgar kissed his bride before the assembled crowd, the cheers that rose came from Norse and Saxon throats alike. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days, with feasting, contests of skill, and the forging of new friendships across old divides. On the final night, as fires blazed against the darkness and the mead flowed freely, Wulfgar found a moment of quiet with his new wife, standing at the edge of the gathering. "Are you happy?" he asked softly, his arms encircling her from behind as they gazed at the stars. Nessa leaned back against his chest, her hands covering his. "Happier than I believed possible when your face was the first I saw upon this shore," she answered. "Though I wonder still what brought my ship to your waters, of all places." "The gods," Wulfgar said simply. "Or your god. Perhaps they are not so different after all, when they lead us toward peace rather than vengeance." She turned in his arms to face him. "Your father was wrong, you know. Love did not bring death to your line, it brought life, and an end to death." Wulfgar nodded, the truth of her words resonating deeply. "In finding you, I found a different path, not just for myself, but for my people." As they sealed this understanding with a kiss, Wulfgar felt the presence of his ancestors around them, not in judgment or urging vengeance, but in acceptance of the new course their bloodline would take. The cycle of hatred had been broken, and in its place, something stronger had begun to grow. In the years that followed, the alliance between Wolftooth, Thundershield, and Tidewell prospered. Trade flourished where raids had once dominated. Children with both Norse and Saxon blood played together, learning the stories and customs of both peoples. And when a son was born to Wulfgar and Nessa in the winter of their first year together, they named him Hrolf Edmund, honoring both the grandfather lost to feud and the heritage that would shape a new generation. The tale of the chieftain who found a weeping woman upon the shore became legend, not just a love story, but the beginning of a change that would gradually transform the relationship between peoples who had seen each other only as enemies for centuries. It was proof that even the deepest hatreds could be overcome, that what the gods bring together, no ancient feud could tear asunder. And on quiet nights beside their hearth, when Wulfgar and Nessa told the story to their children, they always ended it the same way, that the greatest courage is not found in battle, but in choosing peace when vengeance seems the easier path, that love, when given room to grow, proves stronger than the longest hatred, and that sometimes, the surest way to honor those we have lost is to build a world different from the one they knew, a world where their grandchildren might live without the burden of ancient wrongs.